Something happened that hadn't occurred in the 5 months of war between the US and Iran. Two small Arab monarchies of the Persian Gulf, Kuwait and Bahrain, struck Iran themselves for the first time. They secretly struck military targets in Iran with combat aircraft, and this is an important turning point in this war. Until now, both of these countries were only victims. They were constantly being attacked, but they remained silent. Now they have crossed the line and launched a retaliatory strike against Iran, and that's not all. Behind the scenes of this attack are the United Arab Emirates, who provided intelligence and air cover. So, it's no longer about a single country, but about an emerging coalition of Arab monarchies against Iran. Once again, Bahrain and Kuwait launched their aircraft and carried out a direct strike. A strike against Iran, and the Emirates oversaw this operation with intelligence and air cover. At the same time, these same countries are feverishly redrawing the entire energy map of the region, building pipelines bypassing the Strait of Hormuz in an attempt to somehow get out from under the threat of Iranian attacks. So, in this episode, let's take a detailed look at both processes together, because they are connected, and let's discuss how much the war against Iran is really expanding. So, I'll start with the truly historic attack on Iran. According to the Wall Street Journal, back in early July, fighter jets from the Bahraini and Kuwaiti air forces secretly took to the skies in the middle of the night and carried out a series of air strikes on Iranian territory. For both countries, this was the first direct retaliatory military strike against Tehran in their history. What were the targets? According to the newspaper's sources, the strikes hit drone and missile storage facilities as well as other military sites. So, in other words, they struck exactly what Iran uses to attack them, drone and missile arsenals. I should note that both Kuwait and Bahrain are currently suffering the most from Iran's strikes, since US military bases are located on their territory. But the key, the crucial detail of this secret operation is the role of the UAE. The United Arab Emirates, which had already carried out multiple strikes against Iran at the initial stage of the war, this time provided intelligence on targets and ensured air cover for the strike group. That is, the Emirates acted as the organizer and targeting coordinator, while Kuwait and Bahrain carried out the operation. Here's what the Wall Street Journal says about this fact's significance. The fact that three countries, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, cooperated in a single operation indicates the emergence of a coalition of Arab states to counter Iran. Previously, each country defended itself, but now they are starting to act together, and this is important for the entire region. It's interesting that the governments of Bahrain and Kuwait do not officially confirm these strikes, but they also do not deny them. Why are these three Persian Gulf countries involved in this coordination? It's also important to understand why these three Persian Gulf countries decided to do this. Why not, for example, Saudi Arabia? I think the Persian Gulf countries are beginning to realize that this war will continue for some time. Ultimately, this means they will have to openly confront Iran directly, and simply waiting it out is no longer an option. And I think that's the whole point. The Wall Street Journal writes, the strikes earlier this month showed that Arab states are increasingly feeling drawn into a prolonged conflict. For 5 months, these monarchies hope to stay out of it, serving merely as hosts to American military bases. But Iran regularly struck them precisely because US military bases are located on their territory, and at some point they could no longer tolerate it. Let me remind you of the context so it's clear what they were taking revenge for. Here are Bahrain, Kuwait, and the Emirates. Well, most recently, on July 19th or 20th in Kuwait, a fire broke out at a power plant and a water desalination plant because of an Iranian strike. On July 20th, Iran struck American targets in Bahrain and Kuwait, and after that, Iran has basically been attacking these countries every night. And the Emirates have also been hit, Dubai was shut down, the airport was hit, and so on. Iran had been turning these countries into targets for months, and they finally responded. Tehran's reaction is predictable. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that Tehran will not yield to pressure and, quote, will continue to act until the goals and demands of the Iranian people are achieved. And he emphasized, we will not accept a temporary ceasefire. Well, and the commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters threatened that now these countries, quote, will not be safe either. But it even sounds ridiculous. Listen, Iran is now threatening Kuwait and Bahrain, saying that they will not be safe, while Iran has been bombing them almost every night for 5 months now. You know, it reminded me of one episode from the Russian-Ukrainian war. Do you remember how at the beginning of the full-scale war, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and his entire entourage claimed that Russia hadn't even started fighting at full strength yet? Putin said, we haven't started yet. But once we do, you won't know what hit you. And Russians clung to this phrase for quite a while. They kept repeating it. We haven't even started yet. And now oil refineries are burning all over Russia. Wildberries warehouses are burning. Crimea is without power, out of gasoline and effectively isolated. Ukrainian drones have paralyzed Russia's ports in the Black Sea. Ukrainian UAVs are already flying beyond the Urals and striking ships in Kaspiysk on the Caspian Sea. So what does it mean? Russia still hasn't really started fighting for real? Or is this something a little different? And this statement from the command of Khatam al-Anbiya regarding Bahrain and Kuwait is very similar to that. They say, now you dared to strike us, now you won't be safe. But you had been bombing them for 5 months before that. And against this backdrop, the US Embassy in Israel once again urged American citizens to exercise increased caution and remain vigilant, and to be prepared for possible flight cancellations, airspace closures, and other disruptions. Now, the second, no less important part of this episode, because the Arab countries have not only started to strike back, but are also adapting to this war. And this was best described by former White House Middle East coordinator Brett McGurk in an analytical column for CNN. That is, a person who served under 4 different US presidents: Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. Let's analyze his text in detail because it explains where the entire region is heading right now. The main idea of McGurk is as follows. Iran has weaponized the Strait of Hormuz, prompting its neighbors to bypass it entirely. Instead of fighting over it, they're choosing to let Iran have it and shift their focus elsewhere. Across the Middle East, governments and energy companies are speeding up the construction of pipelines, ports, and transport corridors. They are designed to transport oil, gas, and goods bypassing the Strait of Hormuz, not through it. Let's break down the specific projects that McGurk lists. And the United Arab Emirates? The Emirates already have a port and a pipeline, a little south of the Strait of Hormuz, which currently delivers to global markets. That's just under 2 million barrels per day. The Emirates have announced a large-scale expansion program, and they plan to double this capacity by the end of 2027, bringing it up to 3.6 million barrels per day. Next are Iraq and Syria. Last week, the new Prime Minister of Iraq visited the White House and announced tens of billions of dollars in new investments from American oil companies in coordination with Syria. The goal is to restore idle pipelines and build new ones to export Iraqi oil and Kuwaiti oil. By the way, the capacity of this route to the Mediterranean Sea is 2 to 3 million barrels per day. Trump's special envoy for Iraq and Syria, Tom Barrack, said that the goal of these projects is to make the Strait of Hormuz, I quote, absolutely insignificant by around 2030. Next, Iraq and Jordan. The Iraqi government is also speeding up plans to build an oil pipeline to Jordan. It will connect Basra with Haditha in western Iraq, with a branch to the Jordanian port of Aqaba, and it will allow oil to be exported through the Red Sea to global markets. That's between 1 and 2.5 million barrels per day. This project has been discussed for a long time, but it was this month that Jordan and Iraq announced they would speed up its development. Well, they said it directly. This is a response to the Hormuz Strait crisis. And that's not all. Saudi Arabia is now discussing a northern route for deliveries to Aqaba as well, or further north, through Turkey to the Mediterranean Sea. And here, McGurk draws a historical parallel. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States of America proposed an ambitious pipeline through Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey to the Mediterranean Sea. This is the famous Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan route. So it brought Caspian oil bypassing all of Russia, and now the Arab countries are doing exactly the same thing, but bypassing Iran. Significant investments are now being made to expand existing bypass routes and build new ones. These projects will reduce Iran's leverage and increase the resilience of global supplies. And that's exactly why, pay attention, Iran wants to establish a new rule right now. The value of holding the Hormuz Strait hostage is decreasing over time. That's why Iran wants to start collecting tolls, fees for ship passage as soon as possible, in order to make money from it while they still can, because soon it won't be possible to profit anymore. And as McGurk says, this is the key to the whole war. As long as the Strait of Hormuz is the only exit for oil from the Persian Gulf, Iran is holding the whole world by the throat. But as soon as the bypass pipelines start working, their main trump card will lose its value, which is why Tehran is in a hurry. They need to get the most out of the blockade of the strait while the bypass routes are still under construction. However, there is a sober caveat in this situation. Pipelines are not a panacea. They are also vulnerable to cheap asymmetric attacks by Iran, for example, with drones, just like the tankers in the Hormuz Strait. And according to Goldman Sachs, by 2028, the region's pipeline capacity could cover more than 60% of the pre-war oil export volume of the Persian Gulf countries. But they won't be able to fully replace the Hormuz Strait. It's more of a geopolitical insurance against disruptions in the Hormuz Strait than a complete replacement. As a result, for the first time during the entire war, the small Arab monarchies of Kuwait and Bahrain struck Iran themselves, while the United Arab Emirates provided them with intelligence and cover. This means that the war has finally stopped being just a confrontation between the US and Iran. Countries in the region are getting involved, and even an Arab coalition against Tehran is forming. For 5 months, these countries were targets, and now they have become participants. At the same time, the entire region is being reshaped to fit the new reality. Well, since Iran has turned the Hormuz Strait into a weapon, its neighbors are building pipelines bypassing it through Syria, Jordan, Turkey, to the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea as well. And, as Trump's special envoy said, the goal is to make the Hormuz Strait insignificant by 2030. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and give a like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.